So Google's replacement for Google Assistant, I guess you could call it, Gemini, has been out for a little while now, and I think that a lot of the dust has kind of settled. And unfortunately, what has been revealed by the settling of said dust is, I think, quite a few problems, and I think a tactical mistake by Google. Now, don't get me wrong. I think that Gemini is actually really, really impressive, and I have been almost shocked at times with some of the questions I have asked it that it has been able to reliably answer. One great example that I'm not really going to share super good details on because spoiler alerts. We've been watching True Detective season 4, and I had sort of sleepwalked my way through episode number 2, and I was watching episode 3, and I did not know what was going on. So I was like, I'm going to ask Gemini to recap episode number 2 for me, fully expecting it to fail, to fall flat on its face, and instead, it gave me a pretty good synopsis. I even asked it a follow-up question about one character that it sort of alluded to without naming, and it named the character, and as I watched episode 3, I concluded that everything it said was seemingly pretty darn accurate. That is extremely impressive, but I wouldn't be talking about this if there wasn't a but here. I've gotten a bunch of comments from people who have had far worse experiences. People who have been trying to do standard Google Assistant things, and it has been failing pretty miserably with those tasks. Now, you may say, Shane, of course, that's going to happen. They've not fully replicated all of Google Assistant's things within Gemini, and that's absolutely fair, and they are actively working on doing just that. They just haven't arrived there yet. And of course, this is something that you have to opt into. You have to go to the store and download it manually for this stuff to happen. For anybody that tries it out, they don't like it, they can simply uninstall it. That's absolutely true. But we have to go a little bit further here because this article here, February the 13th, Gemini app rolling out to more countries and being promoted in Assistant. I think that is the tactical mistake that they are making. People are now beginning to get this pop-up within their Google Assistant. So it's not just that they have to manually go get it. They're being told about it. And here's what I fear is going to happen. And if I were Google, this is what I would fear is going to happen. People are going to go, oh, Gemini Assistant with Bard, that's cool. I'm going to hit try it now. I'm going to install this. I'm going to try it, and it's going to fail to do some of the assistant things that I'm used to it doing. I'm going to say, this is clearly not for me. This is weird. This is better in some ways, but far worse, actually unusable in other ways. I'm going to uninstall this Gemini thing and go back to Assistant, and I'm never going to look at it again. And I'm not just making this up. I have comments for this kind of thing where people have installed it and they've said, this is not for me. I'm going to uninstall this. What is going to happen when Google actually wants people to start using Gemini? How are they going to convince people to use it when they have very, very reasonable complaints for this? I mean, obviously, the first one is that it can't do the things Assistant can do. And number two, the things it can do that Assistant can do, it does very, very slowly. I think that there are things that we will absolutely be happy waiting an extra second or two to have completed because they're so much more complicated than tasks that Assistant can do. But if I'm simply asking it what the weather is for today, or I'm asking it to do math for me that I'm too lazy to do, that shouldn't take 10 seconds when Assistant can do it in so much less time. So again, people are going to get burned by the current state of Gemini, and they're never going to look back. The only way that Google, I think, could actually address this down the line is once Assistant is fully integrated into Gemini. Once Gemini can do everything Assistant can do, plus more, and they've reduced that speed problem, which not enough people are talking about. It seems to me to be a really big barrier. Once all that's fixed, they're going to have to just shove it down everybody's throat, basically, and just say, hey, this is Assistant now. You were able to opt in or opt out in the past, but those days are behind us. It is what we're doing now. And when will that be? Who knows? So what could Google be doing differently? In my humble opinion, I think, one, you can't be advertising this inside Google Assistant yet. And maybe they painted themselves into a corner because they talked about it with the Pixel 8, and eventually you're going to have to ship this stuff, and you're going to have to let people know, hey, it actually is a thing, and we actually are releasing it, even if it's not quite in the state that we were all expecting it to be. I think most of us expected for this to work better than it currently does, in a sense that I expected all the Google Assistant stuff to just be handled by Google Assistant still, and then for the Gemini stuff to be handled by Gemini. I expected to be able to tell which thing was going to be able to handle the task at hand better, and that's apparently simply not the case. So maybe that's the problem. Maybe they painted themselves into this corner and they felt like they needed to deliver something and they needed to tell people. But here's the reality. Most people who even own a Pixel probably had no idea what Bard was, or Assistant with Bard, or Gemini. So they probably could have kept the wraps on this a little bit longer. And the other thing, maybe there's a technical limitation I'm not understanding there, but it seems to me as though we should still be able to use Assistant for things that Gemini isn't great at yet. And I think that this should be doable, because if I use my Pixel Watch, which is connected to my Pixel Fold, which has Gemini on it, I can still trigger Google Assistant and it runs, right? And we know that this is authorized by the phone. So is Assistant running specifically here? Is it running on the phone? Is it not possible to have Assistant still be there? Maybe it would be complicated for the system to know, hey, this should be Gemini, hey, this should be Assistant. But it seems to me as though there are some obvious answers, right? There are the things that people are complaining about, like quick math problems, or checking the weather, or many of the other things that Gemini they know Gemini cannot do right now. It seems as though they could have Assistant do those things. Again, maybe there's some technical limitation there that I just don't understand, and I'm talking out of my rear end a little bit, and maybe I shouldn't be. Just a thought, though. And look, if you're following Jack here on Twitter, you're going to see that they are iterating on this stuff pretty darn rapidly. They are fixing things, they are improving things, and that's going to continue to happen. It's going to rapidly improve. But just my opinion, I don't think it's in a state just yet where they should be attempting to push it out to a large audience. Now, there could be, talking about tactical errors, there could be a tactic there in the sense that they need more and more people to be using this so that they can know what they need to fix. Maybe that's a bit of a devil's advocate thing. I think it's pretty clear, though, that they know a lot of what needs to be fixed, and maybe that stuff could be fixed before they start literally advertising it inside Google Assistant and pushing it out to potentially thousands, if not millions of people. Just my thoughts. I still think Gemini is quite cool. I'm happy to leave it on my phone. And basically what I've been doing is Gemini's on my phone, and if I need to use Google Assistant to check the weather, do something quick, I've got that on my wrist. So I've kind of got the best of both worlds. Maybe you could do something similar. A lot of you probably have a smartwatch on. Maybe it has Google Assistant as well. At any rate, guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe for more content just like this. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.